I'm not big on clickbait, especially if it's misleading. But if you have actually heard about this evidence that Jesus claimed to be God, I'll be impressed. This was something I just happened to stumble upon, a book derived from a Ph.D. dissertation by Roderick Elledge. It's called Use of the Third Person for Self-Reference by Jesus and Yahweh, a study of Illeism in the Bible and ancient Near Eastern texts, and its implications for Christology. You know it's academic by a title like that. For this video, I come with the assumption that the words of Jesus and others in the Bible are recorded with at least a decent level of accuracy. If you're not there, then I'd encourage you to check out my series on the reliability of the Gospels. But let's get started. Elledge studied Illeisms in the Bible and ancient culture, which led him to conclude something about how Jesus viewed himself as God. Illeism, by the way, is referring to yourself in the third person. So, rather than using words like I or me, you might use words like your name or a title you bear. In this sentence, Matthew gives you an example of an Illeism. And now, the teacher of this video just gave you a second example. See what Matthew did there. So, how do Illeisms give evidence that Jesus claimed to be God? To understand this, we need to know how Illeism was used in the Old Testament times. For instance, a person might use an Illeism to respectfully place themselves under someone else. For example, Ruth 2:13. Then she said, I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, referring to herself. Elledge notes that Illeism was also used with giving an oath, a summons to listen, to characterize yourself, to place yourself in a historical setting, or, notably, Illeism was commonly used in the speech of kings as a way to emphasize their royal status. For example, 2 Samuel 19:11, and King David sent this message to Zadok and Abiathar the priests, Say to the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his house when the word of all Israel has come to the king? Notice that by using the king instead of me, David is using his royal title to emphasize the seriousness of what's going on. But then you have God using Illeisms. Think of all the times you may have seen a prophecy in the Bible, not ending in, thus saith me, but ending with, thus saith the Lord. You'll see statements from God saying, bring the Levites before the Lord, or stand on the mountain before the Lord. Listen to the voice of the Lord your God. These kinds of statements do not categorize in the same way that people in that day used Illeisms. Okay? They were unique to God. They were used by God to establish his identity, his authority, his character, and attributes. The only crossover would be when God uses an Illeism the same way that a human king would use an Illeism. That makes sense, since God positions himself as king. Elledge also found that the same kind of language was used by other ancient gods of that time period. He says in each case, a self-reference distances a god who is referenced from the speaker himself, allowing emphasis of his identity and associated authority and power. In almost every occurrence, the god is either the primary god or one of the primary gods within the context of the associated culture. Here's where it all comes together. Once we get to the person of Jesus, how does he use Illeisms? As a person would, or as God would? Jesus used Illeisms often when he referred to himself as the Son, or the Son of God, or the one whom the Father has sent, or, most notably, the Son of Man. What Elledge found is that Jesus used Illeisms not in the way that was common among people, but in the way that was common among Yahweh God. The only exception, once again, was using Illeism in a way that kings would use it. He concludes on page 143, an evaluation of the various uses of Illeism in the Old Testament reveals Jesus' use aligns only with the Illeism noted in the speech of kings and in the speech of Yahweh. Finally, as noted in chapter 4, this similar use of Illeism is found in the speech of ancient Near Eastern kings and pagan gods. Fascinating, isn't it? It's an interesting piece of evidence that Jesus saw himself as God. Not to be misunderstood, I still think that the strongest evidence Jesus saw himself as God would come from his own implicit and explicit statements he made about himself. I go through that in one of my earlier videos here on this channel, but I hope you found that interesting. Next week, I'll talk about the hundreds of thousands of variants in the New Testament manuscripts and why most Christian responses trying to deal with these variants get it wrong. Should be good. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.